Hello, everyone. My name's Stuart Power. I'm here from Coliance. Today, we have another Coliance Connect chat with our colleagues at IBM. Today's topic is isolation versus efficiency and how to deploy B2B integration platforms on AKS. We have two guests here today. So, Richard, if you'd like to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Stuart. I'm Richard Cross. I'm a brand technical seller focused on application integration within the IBM automation platform. That includes a range of products, including the Sterling B2B suite of products, which I've been working with for about 15 years now. Customers I've been working with across include just about all of the major UK banks, insurers, retailers, oil and gas, healthcare, you name it. Just about every industry that needs to exchange data. That's me.
Perfect. And Andy?
Yeah, hello, Stuart. Andy May. I'm a B2B managing consultant at Coliance. I've been working with the Sterling product suite for, I'm going to show my age here now, probably about 18, 19 years. Back in the day when it was Gentran integration suite all the way through to Sterling B2B integrator. So yeah, been around the block. Recently, I've been dealing with well, sort of working with manufacturing companies, banks, finance companies, legal companies, and more recently, sort of tech US-based banks, doing various migrations from legacy platform and modernising their environments and strategy into sort of a containerised environment. So yeah,
Perfect. So obviously, let's keep things simple for these snippets of information that people are going to gather. So start with the easiest one. What is B2B integration? Who uses it and how do they use it? Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah, at a very high level, B2B integration stands for business to business integration. So no business works in isolation. Every business has customers, they have suppliers, they need to exchange information with them, and other partners as well. So, yeah, just thinking about the banks, that could be customers. So you'll typically see, especially on the corporate banking side, that customers will upload files containing hundreds, thousands of transactions. Yeah, that could be payments, direct credits, treasury management transactions. That's simple, basic, but very critical data that is exchanged. They also exchange data with others like credit rating agencies, so credit ratings, fraud checking. Those payments trigger transactions that need to be exchanged. But beyond that, you've got other things. You need to move data around between different branches, different countries where they're multinationals, and also externally to other partners they work with. Well, that's marketing, statement printing, whatever it might be. That they're moving data. If you look into the more traditional B2B integration, it sort of tends to go into EDI, electronic data interchange, where it's the procure to cash, order to pay type model that a customer sends a purchase order to a supplier, the supplier sends an acknowledgement back. You've got shipping notices, invoices. So the whole gamut of transactions across there that needs to be exchanged between those businesses, and they need to be done efficiently, clearly, with non-repudiation. So someone can say, I never got it. I've got to be able to prove that the data did get there, it got accepted, especially when it comes to things like payments. So it's about how do you do that? How do you do that efficiently, reliably, and with visibility, in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, makes sense. So I guess, look, a lot of the technologies that you've been talking about and you've both explained in your intros have been, these technologies have been around for a while. People have been relying on them for a long time to make those trades and to be in business. Obviously, everyone's on a journey to modernisation, and obviously that's part of the topic today in terms of the different deployment options that people have perhaps done in the past and are perhaps looking to do in the future, whilst maintaining that level of security, that particularly, when talking about payments, etc., people want to ensure that those details are secure. So I guess when we're talking about B2B integration, what are the deployment options most commonly available? Why do people need to modernize, and how do they, what are the options available to them? Andy, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I always think of the analogy like when you used to burn DVDs and then send them out, as like a sort of a traditional legally, yeah. So, they're sort of they're burned, and then you package the whole thing onto one DVD and then you send it out. Whereas Netflix now is like a container; it's all streamed, it's all modern, and you can pull your films dynamically as you want them. And that's how I see a sort of container. It's more dynamic. It's not just here's your DVD. Again, showing me age, but that's it's much more agile in the way it works with containers.
Is that why people are asking for that then? Are customers asking for the agility, but then
I think it's to
security,
do with
performance? I don't know.
Yeah, there's various things that you get with containers. I mean, just as an example, you think of a truck, a truck with just one container on it, and that space is just your one application, which is like a VM. Whereas containers have their own different sections as part of that one truck, so you get lots of different containers that form one big container on one just sort of truck. So it's a lot more about agility, dynamic, and automation, and the things you can do with containers. It's all So, for instance, traditionally, when you would do an install, you would download the software, you would copy the software to a server, you would apply, and then you would, 2 a.m. in the morning, you would be clicking an upgrade or an install and watching it vigorously and making sure it's consistent. Whereas with containers, you can automate the whole thing, and the way the containers work, it's like a relay. It would apply one pod at a time to do the upgrade, and then it'll always keep one up at any one time. So it's a lot more resilient in the way it works, and it can all be automated. So you can go from changing a config file and pushing that to a Git repo, which is a repository, and then you can have an automation tool like Argo CD, which will then synchronize the repo into your cluster. So the whole thing, you can do an upgrade in minutes. That's quick and resilient. And the way the Kubernetes works, it has rollback and different version controls. So if there's any problem, it'll roll back in a graceful manner. So it really takes the manual tasks out of the equation. It's just about doing things quickly, rapidly, dynamically.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that a lot. Customers talk a lot about tech debt. That if you are installing servers, virtual machines with the software, once you've installed it, that's not the end of the story. You've got to keep it up to date. With the constant vulnerabilities that are being discovered, the security holes that have to be fixed, you constantly have to keep that software up to date. So making that easy to do, automated, driving those efficiencies makes the cost and the effort of managing the environment so much less. So that's a big driver from an operational point of view. But the other piece around that, of course, is resilience, scalability. As Andy talked about resilience, that's a critical thing as well. If you're running containers under Kubernetes manages that environment for you. And instead of having to stand up additional servers or additional VMs when you need to grow the software, what you see with containers is that applications start to get broken down into smaller chunks or microservices. And those microservices running semi-independently can be scaled independently if the product's architected correctly, so that automatically the system, the solution, the environment, whatever you want to call it, can react to what's happening in the real world. So, if you suddenly get a glut of orders coming in, the system can scale out to cope with that. And then when things quiet down again, it can restrict back down again, which reduces your compute cost.
Yeah.
Not only that, in terms of resilience, if something breaks, the Kubernetes environment, the idea is you say, I need this many of this particular microservice running. And what it will do is if one of them disappears, it'll spin another one back up again. So you're making sure that the system is there, it's available, and it's responsive as you need it to.
And look, yeah, I appreciate not every customer's the same, and wish they were. Do I? I don't know, but every customer's different. Every challenge is different. Everyone's budget's different. But is there a good time to move towards containerization? Is there a benefit for containerization today versus waiting?
I think it depends on the type of company as well. I mean, a containerized environment it might not be for everyone. If you haven't got a large environment and you're not planning to scale and you don't need the resilience that Kubernetes, then maybe it's not. But I think for companies that require the security, the resilience, the high availability, it's definitely worth the time and the effort to look at that. And I don't, we're seeing more and more companies now. I mean, it's like when VMs first came out, took a little while for companies to adopt that strategy, but now I'm seeing it more and more. I think it was 50-60%, I think, in the marketplace last time. And I think a lot more companies are maturing towards containers. I'm seeing it more and more.
Yeah, I mean, you've certainly seen that a lot of companies, especially in the enterprise space, the larger companies, they're moving more and more towards a cloud-first, cloud-native approach for any application. So anything new that they tend to be developing and deploying themselves will go down the container route because it gives lots of benefits in terms of the management, as Andy was talking about. From our point of view, as a software provider, it provides some simplification in terms of support because a container is designed to contain everything you need. So we know that all the prerequisites that the software needs are going to be there because they're in the image that the container is built on. Where we tend to see some lag maybe is some of the bigger customers who still have a big on-premise presence or requirement to run on-premise, because of regulatory requirements, whatever, because they're dealing with certain types of data that for security reasons they want to keep on in their own data centers where they're still running data centers. A lot of companies now are doing away with data centers. It's all in the cloud, but where they're still running on premise, the legacy infrastructure capabilities they have tend to mean that they may still be running non-containerized versions of the software, which is fine. It works. It's horses for courses, as you said. But where they have those skills are probably the most important piece. The experience of deploying and using containers. Then we see customers more and more looking at doing that.
Mm. And so, Andy, obviously, you've got first-hand experience of doing these types of deployments with customers. Things that have tripped people up. Some advice, some tips and tricks, other than just call clients.
Yeah, I mean, there was the one aspect that stuck out in my head was the company I was dealing with wanted to have everything automated, but previous to version 6.204 of B2B, you had to have local config files locally in your Helm chart, but they didn't want to manage the Helm chart, so they were being pulled down at runtime and then merged in with the value files when they were pushed to the Git repo. So it was very difficult for us to manage how we wanted to handle those properties. But then IBM produced 6.204, which introduced init containers, and then we could bundle those values into the init container, and then the whole process after that was automated. So anything from an upgrade to a change, the whole process, there was nothing managed locally other than a local values file. Everything after that was that was a big win in my book. I was glad to see that version come out that and handled that. So there's nothing locally required to be held.
Yeah, but one of the things I guess to make sure you look at is there are still compatibility requirements, although running the software on a virtual machine or a server where you've got loads of other software running on it. There's lots of things that have to be taken into account, the Java versions, etc., because it's Java-based code. A lot of that goes away by the fact you've got a container, an image that's doesn't change basically, and has everything that you need on it. It still has to run in an environment, so there's some kind of platform that those containers run under. So that's where things like AKS come in. The Azure Kubernetes Service. That's what provides the underlying technology that spins up the containers, that makes sure the containers are running, provides sort of the networking layer, the load balancing between the multiple instances of each pod or instance of a container. You need to make sure you got the right version, because the container images are developed and tested for specific versions. So you need to keep within the bounds in terms of that, because this software is constantly changing, it's constantly developing, it's all changing very quickly. So making sure you're current, but not getting ahead of the game, if you like, will make sure that you don't have any problems. And from our point of view, from a software supplier, we have to test, make sure everything works. So we have a compatibility chart that our support teams will look at. So it's looking at how fast can you move, but at the same time we have to do that. We have to do that across lots of customers. So we can't necessarily move too quickly, because if we do something that fixes something for the latest version for someone, it might break it for someone else. So it's all about how do you keep current, and that probably is where some of the isolation versus efficiency comes in. That in theory you can have a Kubernetes cluster that provides the compute capability for multiple applications to run, and run those all as one big cluster. But if you've got different bits of software from different vendors, homegrown even, that have different requirements around that, you could start hitting problems, because one might require version X, another one requires version Y. What do you do if they're all in the same cluster? If you isolate those, you're avoiding some of those problems, but maybe not having quite the same level of efficiency in terms of the number of clusters. So there's things to bear in mind and think about, even when it's a container, just spin it up in your AKS environment and away you go.
Okay. Andy, anything to add on that?
No, so there's lots of different ways. The architecture, you think, is completely different in the way you structure it and how you want to, your VNets and different clusters. You go off on like one cluster, different clusters, which namespace, how you want to segregate all your different pods. There's more to think about, and not only from an architectural point of view as well, something I've seen as well from a support aspect. Traditional support teams would just be an application support, whereas they now got Kubernetes and the application and the infrastructure and automation and the other parts. So it's not just apples for apples, as they say. It's a different methodology and technology, but I think the return on investment, in my opinion, is hugely beneficial.
I guess that's one of the big things that IBM are always trying to hammer home, that choice is there for customers. They recognise that not all customers are going to jump to change, and that there's going to be budget constraints and reasons why you can't necessarily move, even though that's your vision. But IBM give people the choice, give them the support contract behind that to do that for as long as they possibly can. Obviously, Reliance offer the skill set around those different technologies and those different reasons when to migrate and how to migrate. So for me, it's a great partnership in terms of what we do together. To getting close to wrapping it up here, guys. So is there anything else you'd like to share with the people around the isolation versus efficiency topic?
I think security is another topic, and it's very sort of topical at the moment with all the stories, like all the problems with checking in your bags at the airports, that kind of thing. Marks and Spencer's, to name one name. There are others, of course, who've been hit and impacted by all these cyber attacks. Security is a key thing, but with the containers, the AKS type model, You're moving away from, network layers where you have applications that can talk to each other, more towards isolation of the individual components of those applications, and strict rules about what can talk to what. So software-defined networking, which, we do see with more traditional deployments, which can cause some headaches, as we see some customers, to that being built in native as part of a sort of Kubernetes container type deployment, that you're defining these pods can only talk to these pods. So there's less risk that if someone gets access to one bit of some system, they can start propagating across to other systems, and the attack vector, the attack surface becomes much smaller as to what someone can do. So there are security benefits as well as the operational efficiencies, etc., to moving to this model.
Okay, Andy, any final comments to that?
No, I think it just gives you more flexibility. There's lots of different ways that you can handle the controls, and you can put in different layers, like put in mesh networks to encrypt everything in a cluster. There's lots of different tools out there, and things like and Kubernetes. It's still evolving. It's still being invested in. I saw another one recently where the new version of Kubernetes, you don't need to restart the pods to upgrade the memory. It does it all. It keeps the pod up while it's making those changes. So it's still getting better. Just gives you more flexibility, and you can automate the processes.
Excellent. Well, I think that's us for time. I'm going to do a little shout out for Andy, because he won't, in terms of Andy's written a couple of articles and blogs, a couple on this subject. So I'm sure you can find Andy on LinkedIn. I'll try and remember to post him in the LinkedIn comments. But Richard, Andy, thank you very much for your information shared today. Very valuable with the customers. Please reach out if anyone has any further questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Richard.